Hi, and welcome to our Team Vigo Spotlight. I'm Bill Riley, Director of Communications, and I'm here with Dr. Hayworth for our normal Wednesday updates. First, I want to take a look at the dashboard, which is now updated at vigoschools.org, our new updated vigoschools.org. We have 10 student positives with campus contact in the last 14 days. That's slightly up from 9 last week. We have 6 staff positives with campus contact in the last 14 days. That's slightly up from 5 last week. 157 students actively quarantined. That's up from 106 last week. And 25 staff actively quarantined. That's up from 18 last week. So one thing that jumps out at me is our numbers remain pretty steady, even though we've had some elementaries in full time for 2.5 weeks. Another set of elementaries in for a little over a week. And of course, this is middle school's second day back to a 5-day-a-week schedule. Dr. Hayworth, what do you think?
Well, just like since the start of school, we're monitoring quarantines, we're monitoring positive cases on a daily basis. Probably one thing that I think about is our athletic seasons, and wondering, if we were even going to be able to have athletic seasons. And so while our schools have been A-B, our athletic teams have been functioning after school on a daily basis. And I think to everyone's surprise, our attempts at masking, social distancing, even in those practices, have been successful. Maybe there are some lessons learned in our athletics and how we've been able to manage and go through this season with few positive cases. It may have been the alarm early on in our school year that helped set our trend data the way it's been going. And as I think about, coming back full time at the high school, is that an example? Is that something that we can learn from?
Great. Well, I think, we're still considering a return to 5 days a week at high school for next week. We'll have an announcement later this week. But in advance of that, I think we wanted to share a little extra data today. So just so everybody recognizes, the dashboard, it reflects the number of cases that were positive on our campus during that person's infectious period. We felt like originally that was the number that the public should care about. What was the risk of exposure, even with masking, sanitizing, and distancing? But internally, and with our task force, we also take a look at total positives and quarantines. Now, there is a difference between total positives. We do have some people that are staying at home during their infectious period, which is really what we want, not coming to school. But we still track that number of cases internally and with our task force. So today we wanted to just present that data, just a look to see kind of some more data for people to understand. And what you're seeing now is active positives and quarantines. These are the number of students and staff combined that cannot be in our buildings due to either having COVID-19 or being quarantined because of a close contact. I also want to be a little clearer about quarantines. It's a preventative measure. Many of our quarantined students and staff never contract the disease. But when they've been at a gathering outside of school where someone has tested positive, for instance, we want to make sure that they don't put students and staff at risk. Quarantine's not necessarily a bad thing. We've kind of taken it to mean like a public service almost. So a few things jump out at me in all these numbers. One is that we only have 4 current active cases at the high school level. That's whether they were infectious on our campus or not. We also have only 3 current active cases at the middle school level. Again, infectious on campus or not. Now, the other thing that jumps out at me is you look at schools like North, South, Lost Creek, Rio Grande. Lost Creek and Rio Grande, 2 of our largest elementary schools. And these schools have a big ratio of active cases to quarantine. And I think what these schools show is the quarantine is a case-by-case basis, but we're also staying aggressive with the health department to quarantine. This has been vital to stopping the spread, keeping people home during a potential infectious period. Dr. Hayworth, what is your confidence level at keeping contact tracing and quarantining up, because it's clearly saved us from a lot of cases?
Well, right now, confidence level is fairly high. When you think about the position that our school is in, 17 of our schools have no active positive cases. My confidence level is high because of the work of our task force. Confidence level is high because we're in constant contact with the health department on a daily basis, and they may think too much on a daily basis. But I think the key to understanding of how our schools are going to deal with this situation is that we've got to keep moving forward. We have to keep doing all the right things that have led up to our success to this point. Also, when we think about our schools inside the broader community, will we be able to maintain, keep up contact tracing? If there's one thing that gives me pause, it is that ability to be able to do that, and not because I don't have confidence in the health department. It could just be that our community numbers make it difficult for us to do what we've been doing inside our schools. So we want to get the point across that we're going to continue to monitor our situation. But it's going to start to change a little bit. I think once we get all of our schools back in, hopefully we can continue to share information like we are today and think about school by school rather than a district approach or a school level approach. What's happening inside an elementary school, what's happening inside a middle school and our high school. So confidence level is high right now. We need to keep masking, we need to keep social distancing. And we need to make sure that our community has the ability to track and give us information in a timely manner.
Yeah, so I did a little math today, which for a former English professor is a little scary, but when you look at the number of people we have in our organization and the cases we've seen, we're experiencing cases at a third of the rate of our counties. So while county numbers are up, we're not necessarily seeing that same level of bump in our school numbers. And so I think one thing that we need as a school corporation is for our community, everyone, in and out of our schools to keep it up, right?
Yeah, well, I agree with that. And though our confidence level is high right now, we can't be too proud if we see that something happens that we might need to pull back.
Yeah, and I think that daily monitoring will tell us if we do need to pull back. A decision on bringing high school back full-time still to come this week. Talk a little bit about that.
Yes. As a group, we want to continue to be cautious. We want to keep working to make sure that in terms of our students and our staff, that we're always thinking about their safety. So when we think about coming back on the 19th, it is still our intent before this week is out to be able to communicate what that intent is.
Yeah, and I thought a little bit about North and South, which are our two biggest schools in our school corporation, Otter Creek being our third largest in the corporation. We have about 1,300 students at North and South who chose in-person education. But what that really means that if we come back full-time, we'll really only have about 1,100, 1,150 in each building at once due to attendance. Quarantine will certainly play a role in that. I just think that's a real eye-opener for those who remember a North High School at 2,200 students. And that's what that building was built for. We don't necessarily have those crowding issues that people might think of when they think of their time at Terre Haute North, speaking, of course, of our parents, perhaps, even.
Yeah, when you talk to folks that graduated in the 70s or 80s, and you talk about graduating classes that are at 350, sometimes you get a look of shock and wonder. But that's where we're at as a district. And so when we do bring our students back, we're not bringing back 2,000 students to North or 2,000 students to South. It is probably more in that 1,100 range. Our schools can social distance in those, our students can social distance in those schools. But I think it also leads to a conversation that we were having last February, and one that I can hopefully get started again for our community, and that is, what do we do with our high school situation?
And that was a simpler time. So, well, Dr. Hayworth, thank you so much for your time today, and we look forward to an announcement on high schools later this week.
Thank you very much.